Try that again. All right. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining today. My name's Matt Sherman from Geek Psychology, where I help geeks, gamers, and creatives to have more confidence and motivation. And a lot of that is using personality type, because I feel the more you can understand about yourself and leverage that for personal growth, the better off you're going to be. It's kind of like knowing your personal skill set, your talent tree, and whatnot. And for this interview and the first of these kind of live casts, we're going to bring in my ENTP friend and I suppose community manager for Geek Psychology. You probably know him from the Discord channel if you're in there. If you're not in the Discord channel, I'll link that below in the description later on, and you can hop in and enjoy some geeky conversations about personal growth with us. So, Rahul, how you doing?
Not bad. Hey, happy to be here. Hello to everyone watching at home. You are here because you think I might be cool. I am sorry to disappoint you immediately. Not that cool. But I am the community manager. Exactly. So it is my job to make sure that you guys who drop by our Discord channel and any other future content that we have coming out there are indeed having a good time and, you know, are able to get behind the wheel and of your own selves, right? And you know, kind of get a hold of your character, right? And experience some rapid personal growth.
Yeah.
Through Geek Psychology.
That's right. RPG, rapid personal growth. You came up with that one. Yeah. It's so fascinating and just so leverageable to be able to say, okay, this is actually how I work. This is how I see the world. And these are the things that I'm naturally going to be better at. Like, even if you just think about games and not personality type, you know, the warrior is the one that's going to want to run in there into the front line. Right? Kind of be the vanguard. And some people just play their whole life thinking that they're a different class, thinking that they're supposed to do the other thing. And it's like, once you have that language around like, oh, wait, actually, I'm kind of doing this in a way that's counterproductive or going against the flow, or I didn't even really realize that that was what I was doing. It's so amazingly just freeing, first of all, to be able to be like, oh, I can feel okay with myself. And I know that I just approach things in a different way. And that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was about to say, you know, like going back off of our personal story, you know, like when I met you, I'll give everyone at home like the Spark Notes version. I guess the rest of you will just have to wait for my post-success memoir to get the field details, right? No sneak peeks for you. You guys got to buy the book whenever that comes out. But suffice to say, I was going through a bit of a rough patch shortly after college, you know, kind of the normal quarter life crisis, I guess, that we've all become kind of intimately familiar with. I imagine that 2020 has been the year that a lot of people have gone through their requisite quarter life crisis, right? For all those people, you know, kind of coming of age and entering the real adult world. So back then I was just, it got to the point where I was, you know, kind of like, waking up from a dream, if you will, right? Where, you know, the me previously had kind of been on autopilot, right? So I stopped being an NPC and, you know, some stuff happened and I was like, okay, wait, hang on. I don't think I'm actually got a hold of the controller, right? I feel like a sim, kind of just going through the motions, right? And, you know, requisite struggles, you know, dealing with problems of, you know, confidence, you know, career kind of confusion as far as where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, what I was good at, and just kind of like general lack of purpose. Also, like you know, for those of you at home, as you can see on the little description in the doobly-doo below, I am what is known as an extroverted, intuitive, thinking perceiver, or ENTP for short. So a lot of the struggles that we kind of go through have to deal with, you know, coming to grips with who we are and I guess what is indeed cool about me or what I can and cannot do. So that was kind of the, you know, introspective questions that started driving me in the direction of learning both about myself and what we like to call Jungian psychology or typology. So I had done a lot of, digging and reading on my own. I had attended seminars and whatnot, but I still feel like I wasn't quite getting the most out of it. And then I happened to come across your channel and I was like, wait a second, this guy's onto something, right? Because again, for those who don't know, I run a bit of a little game studio type deal. I design RPGs, and so that's going to be something that we get to talk to you guys more about very soon, very shortly, in fact. But before that being the where our relationship ended up, right? Early on, it was more like, this guy, his name is Matt. He seems kind of cool, handsome looking dude. He's got some videos talking about what I think is my type. And, Tony Stark. I like Tony Stark. He and I have some stuff in common. I'm a huge Iron Man fan. So are you. So we bonded over those elements. But I was looking at the channel. I was like, okay, he's onto something, right? He's talking about games. Okay, I'm a gamer. I have experience with RPGs. I played a fair bit of D&D in high school and college. What if I was an RPG character? And then, again, kind of peeling back those same kind of nerdy thoughts and layers, right? I started thinking of, well, the brain is just a computer, right? The brain computes. It takes problems and, problems come in, some, finagling happens in between, and then solutions or behaviors pop out the other end, right? So what if you could tweak the code, right? Like, what does my code consist of? And that's how I started to kind of think of all these psychological concepts, all these self-development, techniques and processes that, you helped me discover or kind of consolidate thereafter after we started hanging out, right? And using that information, I started getting more and more involved in the typology communities, obviously with our Discord, with other Discords out there, with other Reddit boards out there. And, here we are, 5 to 6 years later, really saying, here's an opportunity for other people like myself, like yourself, to say, okay, well, who am I really, right? And that's a big loaded question. But what we can at least hope to answer is, well, what can you do? Like who are you as far as what skills do you have, right? Are you a mage? Are you an innovative explorer like myself, right? Or an analyzing adept? Are you these characters that we've constructed to simply serve as an analog to say, hey, whoever you are out there, you've got a skill set, right? It doesn't necessarily have to correlate to what you studied in school or, what your hobbies or interests are, but you can do things that other people, may or may not necessarily be able to do. And you have some unique qualities about yourself. So let's take that and let's try to give you the best kind of foundation to look at your life in a new way, right? And maybe level up just the same. So that's a little bit of the background that I have going on there.
A lot of that, what you just said about, who are you, what class do you play and stuff like that. Like, I think one of the biggest goals in my mind for personal growth and things like that is to map over where you have a skill in one domain to where you're struggling in another domain, so that you can kind of move that skill over. And a lot of us, gamers and geeks and creatives, all like we super focus, we geek out on some specific things, and we get really in-depth knowledge about it, and we feel kind of like heroic in a sense within that domain. Like, I know how to do this, I know how to deal with this. And you have the stories that go on in your mind about, the success and the power and all that other stuff. And I think it's a matter of, like, within the RPG model, if you attach it to classes, to character types, to archetypes, then you can kind of like skip a step in that identity level shift. And you can like use that as the thing that trickles down and affects your capabilities, your beliefs, your actions, your environment, by just seeing yourself in a different light. It's kind of like the act as if kind of frame, right? I'm just gonna do it and pretend that I can. But it's a little bit, actually, it's a lot bit more loaded and more kind of like a nice little pill, right? It's got all this information and all this like capability and power within it. And seeing yourself in a different light can change everything, right? If you see yourself as socially capable or socially incapable, it's going to shift how you interact with the world within any social sphere, right? And that's a whole, that goes off into so many different domains.
Absolutely. I think self-development is like one of the best things that we can focus on. And really that introspective, aspect of like finding out, genuinely speaking, like, not only what your strengths and weaknesses are, but like how you go about doing things, like really take that kind of bird's eye view, or, like a drone camera, kind of like documenting your life and looking at yourself from a third party point of view and saying, okay, well, I'm so-and-so, right? You're Matt Sherman. I'm Rahul Kanojia. And, this is what we do. This is what we're like. And, I hope that everyone watching out there, takes this as a firsthand account, right? Like, yeah, I work for the channel, but I guess like first and foremost, my position in being here is really just coming from a point of like thankfulness, right? And to say that, hey, thank you for helping us get here. And I'd like for everyone watching to have that same opportunity of self-discovery. So I think I've talked enough about what you and I do. I think most people are just here to, look inside and get like an x-ray. Is there like a little hamster wheel going on there? What's actually behind the scenes? What makes this guy tick?
The mechanical hamster.
The mechanical hamster, exactly.
And calculations at the same time. Yeah, I see a lot of people here, a lot of comments. ENTPs are sexy, and talking about IQ and stuff like that. I love ENTPs. I find you guys so fascinating, and I'm surrounded by them now, especially within Geek Psychology, but also my father-in-law and a couple friends are ENTPs, and I find it, it's a different approach. It's not how I interact with reality. And I find that fascinating, which is personally why I love all the different personality types, right? In that sense of like, you just do things differently than me, and that's so cool. And yet we bond with extroverted intuition, right? So I think maybe we should start with extroverted intuition, which is your hero, your dominant function.
Yeah, our tether.
Yep, definitely, yeah.
So,
and first of all, like within the RPG model, we call extroverted intuition the innovating explorer.
Exactly.
And this is, about innovation. It's about taking these things and putting them together to create some new emergent, some new innovation, and exploring the possibilities of the mind, memes and potential and possibilities and all those different things. So you have this character class, and I want you to explain, what's your relationship to extroverted intuition? I know that's a big question.
Before I get into that, I want to address some of the comments in the chat real quick. So,
Sure.
Any questions that you guys have, I'm going to hold that off to the end. I am making a mental note of what they are. I have them copy pasted over here for both of us to look at. So we'll get to those real soon. But extroverted intuition. Sure.
Hold on 1 second. I can bring those out later, and I can put them down at the bottom. So if you guys do have a question, make sure you put it down there, and maybe even highlight before, like put question, and then let us know. Of course, the question mark will denote that too, but it would help to piece it together later. Okay.
Absolutely. Lovely. Okay. So extroverted intuition. For those who are not in the know, it's really a way of looking and perceiving the world, right? It is the perceiving part of ENTP is really where that comes from. And the way I've always kind of seen it for myself, like I have video examples that I use to kind of inform people who don't have that same background information coming into the Discord channel. People ask about it all the time. The best way that I can describe it is if you ever watch the movie Iron Man 3, where he's doing like the little detective scene where Happy gets blown up by one of the extremist soldiers, right? And Tony's trying to piece together what happened, and he has Jarvis construct a like big 3D model of the Chinese theater in Los Angeles where the explosion happened. And the whole time, like he and Jarvis are kind of riffing back and forth, like coming up with data and statistics. That extrapolation of what is effectively a police report, right? Because that was just words on a paper, right? That between he and his computer software are now constructing into something that exceeds the simple element of just being a police report, right? With whatever data happens to be collected, right? But he's creating like a 3D environment to like stroll around in, like almost like a hologram. That's a lot of, and I know that sounds like really spooky now that you're like thinking of it. It's like, what is he doing? Is he a magician? No. It's all happening up here. Power of imagination, right? So like for those who are Trekkies out there, it's like having a holodeck, or being able to go inside of a holodeck. And being able to simulate whatever it is that you want to create and manipulate inside my mind. Like right now, through the power of NE, you have a very nice little black hat there. Boom, it's red. Clear as day. It's red now. For me, at least, right? Like an overlay. That's one way of doing things. What we're really doing is projecting, at least the way I've always viewed it and the way I personally interact with it, having it as my dominant function, I'm able to project and kind of simulate or turn objects around and view at them through what is known as the mind's eye, right, or theater of the mind. Mm-hmm. That's one way of looking at things. And then the other thing is, like, once you kind of know things, and by know things I mean have a certain understanding of the world. When I walk through the world now, another good movie example to think about as far as the analogy is concerned is in the first Bourne movie, so the Bourne Identity, when Jason Bourne is meeting his female lead, whose character name I don't remember at the moment, but whatever, they're in a diner, right? And they have just kind of finished their first like big car chase, whatever. So now they're like in a diner and she's like, who are you? Where do you come from? How do you know these things, right? And he's like, I don't know, right? But then he immediately tells her, like, I know where the best exits are in the diner. I know the fact that there's like a sedan outside that has like a M16 in the trunk, right? And I know there's like a cop sitting at the bar or whatever have you, right? Mm-hmm. So once you pick up on those patterns, like once, all that stuff kind of just comes. And like if I'm in an environment, like things that are of worth or that I value or that are like worth perceiving will kind of just, be highlighted, for lack of a better word. I use a lot of video game examples because that's something that you guys at home can easily look up, or movie examples and be like, okay, he's talking about like that scene as a visual representation, right? So, like Eagle Sense in Assassin's Creed. Not to say that I'm, anywhere close to Ezio's prowess, right? But you just kind of pick up on things. Not yet, exactly. That's something that I'm definitely working on. I have an assassin's cloak in my closet. That's been a Halloween costume many a year previous. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so NE is just a way of perceiving the world that goes beyond what you're seeing right then and there, right? It's not looking at things from a superficial level, right? Like, trying to think of something. Here, let me just get a tangerine. I have some fruit on my desk.
NE is looking around and picking something and saying, okay, it's kind of like this connection.
So yeah, okay, put it up for the camera. So this is a tangerine. I have a bowl of fruit because I'm trying to eat healthier, right, on my desk. So this tangerine, right? Most people are like, okay, it's a tangerine, so what, right? But for me, depending on, again, your knowledge, right, there's a lot of traits that I can begin to attribute to this tangerine. If I walked into a room and there happened to be a bowl of fruit, right, and somebody had taken a bite out of an apple, one of the strangest immediate first thoughts that would come to mind is I can count. If I were to like really look at the apple, like scrutinize it, I mean, not just as a glance, I'm not superhuman, but if I were to take a look at it, right, like I could kind of gauge their the configuration of their teeth in their mouth, right, like which teeth are like crooked and out of order or something, or how much did they really like that apple? Did they like take like a big bite out of it, or did they just like kind of nibble at it, right? So that's something that my brain would immediately start thinking about. Now, is that relevant to the conversation that I'm about to have with that person? Absolutely not, right? Is it something kind of quirky that I could use some point later on? Yeah. So, we're gonna dump that in a little file folder save it for later, right? If it comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like my NE is so tied to TI, as you can probably tell already, that it's so difficult for me to think about it as an isolated function without that like logical edge. Because it's like you have a camera, right? And the lens is NE. The lens doesn't really do anything. The zoom function on a camera is where the magic happens, as you will, right? Like the ability to focus in on something and how well that image is now, like the clarity of the image that is now created is really dependent on how good that zoom functionality is. Because the lens is the lens, right? If it's a little bit murky and whatnot, like that's all fine and dandy. You can edit that in post, right? That's not that big a deal. But it's about the editing software. It's about all the other stuff happening behind the scenes that I think matters more than that just superficial, how is this information coming in?
Yeah. I've often just called the judging functions as the editing software, right, for the camera. I don't remember where that came from, but the lens is the perceiving function, and then whatever you do with that, how you adjust it, how you filter it, depends on your judging function, which we haven't quite gotten into yet. It's very interesting, like how you see NE and how I see NE. Of course, they have many similarities, but I don't see it as like this, highly technical thing that you just explained. For me, it's kind of like, because it's my auxiliary function too. It's a lot of like, I'm just gonna try something. I'm gonna throw spaghetti at the wall and see kind of what it looks like and what it could become from there, and then shape it from there. With my judging function. And it's, for me, it's been definitely a love-hate relationship, a lot of times, which I'm sure you have with TI in some ways too, of like, well, I don't want to leave my comfort zone. I don't want to get out of what feels good, what feels right to me. But I know that that's the point of growth, of personal development, of expanding myself as an introvert. And so for you, if you want to say something before that, I was going to talk about like kind of how TI is the funneling and kind of the condensing aspect for you. If you have something else to say, please.
I was gonna say, if to the best of your ability, if you could kind of like think back to when we first met versus how we are now, and kind of talk about maybe like what's changed and what's different, what's interesting now, and kind of give people like because you just mentioned growth, right? So. Like I can scarcely remember, who I was 10 years ago versus who I am now. Right. That's not to say that I don't have like a good clarity on those memories, just like I am who I am. And I have noticed like how I change, but that's more in comparison to other people that I find similar. So, we know a few ENTPs, a few that are older than both of us and a few that are younger than both of us. Right. And that's always like something. And yeah, I wanted to kind of say this at the very beginning. I am not an authority on my own type, right? Like,
oh, come on.
To that same conversation, like I'm me. I'm pretty different than other people that I've come to know over the years of my allegedly my same type. And we all get along really well, and we're like the best of friends. But we're all like really different people. And this is something that we're going to get into when we talk about each one of the functions and individuality and how that kind of manifests. But, we have different career paths. We have like different interests. We have different ways of talking to people, right? And that, but it's all similar. And that's the really interesting / perplexing thing, is that you stick all of us in a room together. We're either going to be like best friends or, start a brawl, but not really. We're probably gonna like challenge each other to like Pokemon battles on Pokemon Go or something, to resolve our disputes, or some really spirited debates will ensue. Exactly. But that's always been my experience, is that we'll be really consistent on like some fundamental level, but everything below or above that like consistency, whether that's like a logical consistency or just how we go about processing information, that'll be different. And that's like who we are as individuals. But that band that kind of stretches and encompasses all of us horizontally, that I think is the personality type and the way we process information.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something I really like about my approach to understanding personality type. Is like I don't like saying, okay, there are all these different facets and 3,000 different types or whatever like that. Like I feel like you have the base archetypes, and that is a character within yourself. That's a part of yourself, which is actually like a neurological structure, which we're not going to get into right now. But like, if you personify it, if you personify the cognitive function and create a character for it, give it a name and things like that. Like, this is that version of myself that wants to do this stuff, that wants to go explore things. Then you build rapport with that. And there are so many different nuances, as you were saying, like ENTP, and ENTP is not every ENTP, right? But you can definitely see the connecting threads. And just, if you kind of approach it like, well, this ENTP has this character and this different kind of relationship with this function, this character within him, then I think it kind of opens it up to a lot more like freedom of movement, I suppose. And you can just say, well, okay, so maybe his extroverted feeling, which we haven't talked about yet, is more of this kind of character, right? And he has this kind of relationship with it, within himself. And so this emergent questing party within himself is going to be doing these things a bit differently. Mm-hmm. And for somebody who doubles down on TI, on introverted thinking, on the analyzing adept, is going to be, showing up as a different thing, because this is how, like, the strength and the rapport built with that character is stronger or more evident. Yeah.
Absolutely. That was very logical and astute of you.
I try.
You're getting there. You're improving. I see it every day. It's brilliant. So that being said, mm-hmm. Shall we address the elephant in the room? And by elephant, I mean why you keep me around.
What do you mean?
TI. I was just
okay.
Trying to transition cleverly. Whatever. Nah, rolled a nat one there. No biggie. Moving.
Yeah. Let's get into introverted thinking. Mm-hmm. Within the RPG model, it's analyzing adept, and it's all about analysis. It's about taking, and obviously you can explain it with more fidelity and clear than I can.
I'll give him a.
But I see it as this, from what I hear and from what I read and all this other stuff, is like this grid of information and different categories. And it's constantly zooming in within that grid and saying, okay, well, if this is what we're looking at, let's highlight that, like an Excel spreadsheet or something. Let's highlight that. Let's zoom in. Let's get clearer and clearer on the information within there. And the goal is to find like the most accurate, the most correct. I guess I can't say most. I can say most correct, but I know that kind of irks some TI users, because they're like, well, there's just one correct. Is how I've, it's correct or it's not. But for me, it's kind of like a blend and a bunch of shades and stuff like that.
Great.
I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, you're I think, having, been your friend for as long as, we've been friends, I understand the instinct behind that. So I'm not gonna nip that one in the butt. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So back to the conversation, or like the little tidbit that I was kind of talking about earlier, if we get a bunch of us in a room together, like what's going to happen? I've done that a few times now, and may have, no, it's just the building burned down. No.
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10.
You recommend? No.
Depends on what your idea of a good time is, right? But yeah, like we'll it depends again on the individuals and kind of what our interests are, but there is something to be said for that logical consistency, right? I'm going to use another weird video game example, and this is going to be kind of a deep cut, so whoever out there gets what I'm about to say, applause, hats off to you for being as nerdy as I am. So I'm a huge fan of Mass Effect, and in Mass Effect there is an alien race known as the Geth. And the Geth are a created race of sentient machines, okay? And they have physical bodies that they kind of inhabit, kind of like Ultron. So people who don't play video games will watch Marvel movies, kind of like what Ultron did in the Age of Ultron, right? He's one being, but he split himself across multiple bodies, etc. Right? So with Ultron, with the Geth, they're kind of in the cloud, right? They all kind of exist simultaneously, except unlike Ultron, the Geth are all individuals, right? There are individual Geth. It's not like the Borg where they're a hive mind, but there are individuals, and sometimes they disagree with each other. And this is like a beautiful set of dialogue when you kind of ask the main Geth that you interact with as the main character in the game. Shepard is a Geth by the name of Legion. He gives himself a name, right? Because people are like, "What do we call you?" And he's like, "Wait, what are names? Like, why do I have to call myself a name?" And then Shepard is something like along the lines of, "Yeah, I don't know. That's just what humanoids do." And Legion's just like, "Okay, I guess I'll give myself a name just because you said so," right? So he does that, and then he talks about his species and how they interact with one another. And the point is, he talks about their decision-making process, which is each one of them poses an idea, and they kind of have like a debate at light speed within the cloud, right? And then the decision that is taken upon by the entire group of Geth is after they've reached consensus, right? So everyone has it out with each other. We have these conversations, but at the end of the day, if you let us go on long enough, right, given enough time, we'll all kind of reach the same conclusion, and we'll all agree, like across the board, right? It'd be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like that is the correct answer. And then we don't really think about it afterwards. Or, I mean, there's no further disagreement there after the fact, is what I'm trying to say. Like, there's no personalized stake in the matter. It is what it is. Like, it is a fact or it is not a fact. There's no further disagreement unless new information is presented. So it's kind of like a courtroom, right? Like once a jury reaches a conclusion, that case is not reopened until new evidence is provided.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense for me. Actually, my mind was going to like, well, that's just a microcosm of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Extroverted feeling, introverted thinking, and all the different ways and possibilities of looking at things. And so having a bunch of that within an individual container as an individual, and then a bunch of them within a room is kind of mind blowing for me. So I'm just like, oh, that sounds so cool.
So we don't like we can get along, and like the only reason like any friction happens is like when other priorities get kind of put ahead of that logical consistency. But what I'm trying to say is like it's kind of gratifying to me to think about it and be like, like here I am in a group of strangers, but I immediately have this kind of like connection that I can make with all of these alleged strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason we would disagree is mostly to kind of poke and prod and get more information, because that's kind of how we have fun, is that poking and prodding.
Let me kind of just jump into this. How does introverted thinking, this analyzing Adept, help you in your life?
Well, I mean, I'm a problem solver. That's always how I put myself out there. You give me a problem, I give you a solution. I mean, there's a little bit of time and finagling, blood, sweat, and tears in between, but by golly, you're going to have a solution to your problem, right?
That's part of the fun, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry if I could.
No, you're fine. So I actually forgot what the question was.
Sorry. Yeah, I got you. How does TI help you?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, it helps me. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say. Solve problems in a very loose sense. To kind of give you those people out there who are either not TI users or don't really have any idea what that means, right? It is to say that everything has a cause and effect relationship, right? I throw this tangerine, right? It goes up, gravity brings it back down. Cause, effect. Camera, there we go. Cause, effect, right? So TI is allowing me to piece together the cause and effect relationship with everything that I see, right? Everything that's going around me. That's how NE and TI are so intimately connected, right? To like, I don't exist as you know me without those two functions, right? Because those are my top two functions. So how I perceive the world is really actually quite different than another, like my sister type being the ENFPs out there, right? I have a lot of really close ENFP friends and we get along splendidly, but we always talk about how we got to somewhere, and they're always just like, I'm kind of here, and I'm like, well, how did you get there? And they're like, I can't tell you. Rather, it's not that they can't tell me, it's just they have no process of kind of getting there because of how introverted feeling is different than introverted thinking. I can tell you exactly why or how I got somewhere as far as my thinking process or my likes and dislikes or whatever habit, right? Like, I can tell you why I did something. I'm conscious in that respect, or consciously aware, I should say. So as far as like how it helps me, like why even have this as a function? Like, what's the superpower here? What's the abilities this grants you? I like to think of it like, we were having this conversation with some people on the server, in fact, just the other day. And they're like, what's the best type to be? And I, without any like narcissistic influence on this, I just like said my type. And they're like, well, why would you say that? That sounds like incredibly biased. And I'm like, well, think about it. Okay. NE is pattern recognition, right? That's what it does. It recognizes patterns in the vicinity. And then TI is organizing those patterns and is coming to some sort of logical conclusion. And then we'll get into my other functions. But just that by itself, right? Like, that is how a computer works. That is how, mathematical equations are derived. So you plop me into any weird environment, like if you blindfolded me and dropped me off in like San Francisco or something, right? And said, find your way back home, or, find your way to this airport or this hotel, right? And I didn't have like my cell phone or anything on me, right? Well, okay, now we're going to go into problem solving mode. Okay, what do I have around me? NE, boom, right? There's a bus stop. Okay, there's a bus stop. They have a little map, right, in the little cubicle where you sit on the bench, right? That map has the bus routes, etc., right? I can now see what street I'm on, whatever have you, right? I could maybe get a map. I could find a hotel, and I could talk to the concierge, and the concierge would then tell me what other hotels are in the area, right? Mm-hmm. Something along those lines. So it's just problem solving, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Start at A, you have to get to C, you have to figure out how you get from A to C by maybe way of B, right? Mm-hmm. Or 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know about which is the best type. I don't think there's any,
I said that a little bit jokingly, but at the same time, I did want to kind of explain to them and be like, okay, well, depends on what circumstances you're looking for the best type. If we're talking about like adaptability or problem solving, I'd pick myself for one of the IDPs, that I happen to know. And we each have our strengths and weaknesses there. So.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the point of this whole. They're like classes, right? Like, you have different things that you can do, that you should do, that you should honor and bring into the world. And when people are trying to be somebody, I just dropped my phone, somebody other than themselves, the world is missing out on who you are and what you do and what you can bring into the whole mix. I do know a lot of INFPs don't want to be INFPs, but now for me, like, I would not trade it for anything. I could not imagine not living in this introverted feeling kind of internal kinesthetic world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would maybe do some different things, right? I push myself out, do more things, go travel, go explore, and do all that stuff. But yeah, that's my situation with it. So how does introverted thinking hinder you?
Well, I'm gonna try to separate it from me specifically versus, I guess, what I've seen in my type in general. So I'm gonna try to kind of compartmentalize the tool. Me specifically, I have some close NF friends, some ENFPs and INFJs that I've had, kind of intimate conversations with. And one thing that they're always a little bit miffed about is that I'm really skeptical. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, you can be kind of a buzzkill sometimes. And I'm like, you know what? I can be. I'm not going to disagree with you there. I can totally be a bit of a buzzkill. And what I'm alluding to is a few of them are really into kind of like more esoteric concepts, right? Whether that's, astrology, numerology, crystal healing, not to, specifically dig on stereotypes as far as those things are concerned, but like things of that nature, right? Tarot cards and is my fortune cookie really going to tell me my future? Something like that. So, like they're like, hey man, just, like, how do you know, right? Like, that's always the question. It's like, how do you know whether or not any of this is true? And I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I don't. But I'm going to turn that around and say, how do you know that any of this is real or functional or whatnot, right? And that's always going to be my perspective in life. Is I'm always going to take the stance of the skeptic, and they're like, oh, you should have more faith in things. You should have more faith. You should have more faith. And I don't see the benefit really, because in that specific scenario, if you take something on face value, right, and it doesn't work out for you, well, at that point, you got to ask yourself, what could you have done differently to maybe avoid that to begin with, right? And so I just, by default, never take anything for granted, one way or another. I'm always going to be in this analytical mindset, for lack of a better word. And I'm always going to take things kind of as they are. I don't really have much leeway. Now, that's not to say that I don't trust my friends, or I don't trust people who are, say or claim that they're experts. That's not to say that I don't trust things. I think that's more of an extreme example, one way or another. But like, I will always kind of hang back a bit, right? And really scrutinize something. And that necessarily hasn't gotten me into trouble per se, but it does kind of, like, in a way of looking at it, you could be like, oh, they're having fun, right? Like, why can't you just have fun? Right? Like, why can't you just let it go and just enjoy the ride, so to speak? And I guess I am losing a bit of that, but I also don't really see how me losing that is necessarily a bad thing. So I say, yeah, just have fun for me, or just, you can do that, and I'm here to catch you if you fall, or I'm here to kind of offset you, right? Like, I'm acting as an equalizing force in that scenario, right? It's like, go out there, have fun, but in case something bad happens to you or screws you up, here I am coming in, and we're going to sort this out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Realistic.
Exactly. Yeah. Always the realist.
Yeah. I noticed that a lot too. Not just with you, but with the other TPs in my life. Yeah. And there's, at younger stages of my life, and when I didn't know personality type and things like that, I probably would have kind of clashed with that some, but now I take that as like, that's a realm that I'm not looking at, that I should look at. And when both people are mature, everybody in the group is mature, then you can kind of take that into account, and you can work towards getting to the best possible result. And that's the problem that a lot of us have, is we so specialize on different things that we're not looking at so many facets of life.
Yeah. And before we get into the later functions and the game analogies, I think just to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? Each one of us is a character, right? A big facet of, collaborative games like tabletop RPGs, or other RPGs like MMORPGs, for those of you who play like World of Warcraft or D&D, etc., right? A lot of those games emphasize individuals taking their individual skills, right? And then saying, okay, I cover these bases. This is my skill set, vertically, horizontally, whatever. Here's where you are, right? The camera, you're on that side of me. Here's where you are, right? and this is what you have going on for you. This is what I have going on for you. Well, you cover these bases. I cover these bases. That means we're watching each other's back respectively, or we have, a bit of an overlap here. Let's work together. So I can watch out for whatever you can't, do, and then you can take care of whatever I can't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem of bringing, a group of 8 rogues into a battle. Like, you might win. You might.
Oh, yeah.
But if that opening attack does not work out, then well, good luck.
I mean, hey, Guardians of the Galaxy worked as a movie. You had a few multi-class characters in there, but they made it happen. A lovely dance battle.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the whole process of becoming who you are, is learning these skills, learning how to expand to cover different aspects of yourself that you previously did not. Right? We start with our dominant function, right? And then for you, like that's the extroverted world, that's the stuff out there, that's the ideas. And then you need to balance that with something, right? You need to go to another balancing point so that you can kind of zoom in and you can clear up some of those issues. And myself as well, as an introvert, like I had to go do stuff outside and see what it's like. I couldn't just stay at home in my mom's basement forever in Michigan. Like I had to go out and do stuff to learn more about who I am as an individual. And this brings us to the tertiary function, the sidekick, the newbie, who is often a tempting point to keep us staying in the same orientation, staying in the same stance, staying in the same attitude, right? So for you, it's another voice, it's another character saying, hey, just be more offensive, just go out there and do more stuff in the outer world. And for me, it's the opposite. It's staying, going into your little hobbit hole and stay there. Yeah. And that, yeah, of course, it serves its purpose. It has the things that it needs to do in some ways, but it doesn't help you individuate and become, a larger force to reckon with within the world.
I agree.
So for the RPG model, extroverted feeling is called the unifying envoy for us. And it's, I have my own kind of, back and forth with it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Go for it, since it's your kind of opposite nemesis function.
Yeah, it's my rival.
It's your rival. There you go.
It's a feeling function, right? So it's about the harmony. It's about how do I people appropriately, and it's extroverted, so it's in the outer world, right? So it's really like how does the culture guide us here? What does everybody value? What does everybody think? And how can we use that to, in my mind, unify and bring everybody together so that we're on the same page, at least, so that we understand where everybody's coming from. I'm not going to quite get into my opinion on it yet. I want to hear more of your opinion and how you relate to it.
There's 2 main ways that I use it. I'm going to start with like the uppermost threshold where it kind of connects directly to TI. So NE is all about taking the outside world and looking at the patterns that we kind of come across on the day-to-day, right? TI is funneling that in, scrutinizing it, organizing it into categories. Where TI connects to FE, right, for me is how can I take those ideas, how can I take those discoveries and share them, right? Utilize them in a way that the vast majority of people are going to be able to take in and understand. And we're going to stop at understand. Utilize and synthesize we'll get to later, but mostly are you getting the words that are coming out of my mouth right now, right? Is it sinking in? Are you able to understand? And that's really where on any moment to moment level what I'm concerned with. Taking that one step further, right? We're here I'm here rather with you, working alongside you as the community manager. So that's kind of an elevated aspect of FE that I imagine I wouldn't have had, X amount of years ago as a kid growing up, or I maybe not have thought of it or perceived it in this way. But, talking about community management, what does that really entail? Well, We have a group of people here. We have all you lovely, fine folks in the chat over there. I can still see you. But, we have people that we interact with, and it's more like, how y'all doing? What's going on out there? What's the weather like? And by that, I mean, what is the mood? What is everyone coming in with, right? And perceiving that, right? So it's still extroverted feeling. I'm not concerned with what's happening inside me. I could be happy, sad, angry, depressed, confused, whatever have you, whatever arbitrary emotion you want to kind of assign myself in the moment. That stuff doesn't matter because it's all happening internally. That's something that you're intimately either familiar or concerned with, but that's not really what I'm concerned about. I'm more concerned what's happening with you, or with all the people in the chat, or all the people in the Discord, or my mailman Steve when he drops off the mail in the morning. That's of concern to me, right? General
the interrelationships.
Yeah, the interrelation. Yep, interpersonal relationships, exactly.
Yeah, whereas I'm definitely more focused on the intrapersonal relationships, like what is going on with all these different, parts and aspects of myself and the emotions and all this other stuff. Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about trolling?
Oh, okay. Let me
people,
put my Joker makeup on, since that's all what you guys want. That's what you're really here for.
It's always a question. Yeah.
What evil or mischievous machinations does the CNGB have in store for me? I mean, so we have some younger ENTP friends that you and I share, that we interact with on a daily basis, and that's always the big thing that I kind of notice is like, hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're bringing mayhem and chaos to this other Discord server. We're planning a political revolution, a political coup, or I'm trolling the Mormon church chat, which is something that I used to do in middle school, which is funny because I ended up dating 2 Mormon girls later in life. That's a whole other story. Long-winded redemption. But it's so, going back to the stack, right? We're all about ideas. We're all about logical consistency, right? When we interact with people, right, we're kind of hardwired to perceive inconsistencies and Hippocratic statements and things that might be off or don't line up, right? And so, a lot of the joy is digging up new information, like being, the archaeologist of the human psyche, right? Digging in there and finding out, well, who is Matthew? Where does he come from? Why is he wearing that hat? Why is he so, why is he so cool? Exactly.
You want to know why I'm wearing the hat?
Because it looks nice.
No, because I decided I needed a haircut and I didn't want to go out and get one. So I was in the shower sitting in front of the mirror and I took my razor and just put my hair flat and just went,
okay.
This is flat. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I haven't been able to go out and get a haircut yet. But.
Well, there you have it. So,
yeah.
But hey, now we can't, I know that now, right?
Now you have some good information there. There
you go. So that's where so the trolling aspect is really just, are you who you say you are, right? Is the persona or the projection that you are putting to me really what's happening behind the scenes, right? Mm-hmm. The purpose behind that mischief making and that trolling and that kind of abrasiveness that we have about ourselves, right? That is really just a tool to say, I'm going to be real with you. I want to make sure that you're being real with me, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or I want to make sure that the world is exactly how I left it, right? In a manner of speaking, like things are the way they are. So TI, because it's subjective in nature, just to kind of bring it back up, the way it's separated from extroverted thinking, right? Extroverted thinking is dealing with consistencies over a long stretch of time, right? Because NE is so spontaneous and TI is introspective in nature, it's not dealing with overarching consistencies, right? For us, those consistencies have a cutoff date, right? For me, the future is literally up in the air. There's many different variances in reality. There's many different variables that can influence how something may or may not play out. So
that's
for
very
me,
much an NE thing as
that
well.
is very much an anything, exactly. So
Untethered.
for us, we always need to be testing, right? We need to make sure that things are, once again, as we left them, right? What new information is there out there, right? And this is something that's like an instinct. Like you can, once you're consciously aware of it, you can turn it off and on again. Trust me, I can have a nice quiet dinner, for two and not, I don't know, get into a philosophical debate with my waiter, right? That is something I'm entirely capable of. So, that is there, but that, kind of little devil horn / devil's advocate, that's there just to make sure that the universe is not pulling a fast one over us at any given moment. That's really where that's coming from.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I see it, as testing to make sure that you understand, logical consistency, as you said, that your understanding of the world is accurate. And when you're dealing with another person, the extroverted feeling aspect, right, the easiest way to do that is to just kind of to poke and see a little bit, like, well, what if I put this into the system, especially with extroverted intuition? What if I put this in there? How is that going to change things? And what is the core logical component down at the root of it, I suppose? Absolutely. I see it a lot with my father-in-law. Yeah, whenever we go out, he's an ENTP. Yeah, we get along well. Every once in a while, like, I'm just like, just leave her alone, leave the waitress alone. He's always kind of making jokes and flirting and kind of like seeing what will happen, if I put this into that system, and there's this endless curiosity within the explorer extroverted intuition, as well as the envoy, the peopling aspect, right? That's quick, immediate results, immediate feedback. And then you can, narrow in and get some proper data and information from that.
Absolutely. And I think for us, because we're sensitive to a certain degree about like people's feelings and attitudes, both towards us and each other, right? Like a nice bit of levity is always, something that we try to have enter the scenario or enter our environment, right? Like we'll crack a joke, see you smile, say something kind of funny, right? Poke and prod a little bit just to see who kind of, winces or flinches or who laughs alongside of us. It gives us our, understanding of the people around us. So it's never meant to be personal, unless it's personal, in which case you can tell, and then it gets like overly harsh, right?
Sure.
But most of the time, it's really just don't ever take it to heart. Always take it with a grain of salt.
Well, that's one of like the biggest things that kind of irks me about personality, not about ENTPs, about personality type in general. It's like, well, feelers will get upset at thinkers and say, well, you're not taking, me into account and my feelings, and you're not supposed to. As a thinking function is not supposed to do that. It doesn't. I mean, so when you said it's nothing personal, yes, that's it. It's not personal. I mean, there's your subjective logic within that, but it's not supposed to be doing the thing that another person wants it to do if they're a feeling type. Does that make sense? Right. And that's the problem with bringing in your own lens into a relationship or any sort of experience. Right? Is you're seeing it from your own lens in some way. Right. And being able to detach a little bit is helpful. I also, through my own life experience, both me as an individual and then, kind of something that you attribute as a stereotypical trait of us, we're very resilient. We're very thick-skinned when it comes to kind of the verbal joust, if you will. We see that kind of teasing and making fun of / a little bit of insults thrown back and forth as a playful process. Even if you were to like really get like absolutely fired up, not to say that you would, but hypothetically speaking, right? If you were to like just, start berating me or, like going down the list of potential insults, whatever's off the tip of your tongue, right? And throw that my way, I would never take that personally. Just be like, all right, that's kind of how it is, right? Like it would never pierce the TI wall of armor, I guess, if you want to look at it from an Iron Man analogy standpoint, right? Sure. That's my suit, if you will. Like my logic is my suit. So if you want to insult me, call me an idiot.
That's,
Oh,
I mean,
okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Or I guess phrase it as if you're questioning my logic, right? Or you're questioning my intelligence. That's how you get to us.
Yeah.
That's the little crack in the armor. But, anybody who knows what they're doing is also going to account for that as well.
That's interesting because, your auxiliary function is it's a conscious competency. And for me, I made a video about this with the INFP stuff. Like, don't call us boring. Don't call an INFP boring. And I've been called boring plenty of times. Well, but it's because it's all going on in here. I have all these ideas, all these different fantasies and things coming up. But it's within the mind realm, and I'm not bringing it into a concrete sense, right? But to say, don't call me an idiot, or well, you said call me an idiot, but I'm not going to call you an idiot, right? Like that's poking at your auxiliary function. No, not at all. Man, I have to look up words like every time we talk. I'm like, I don't know what is that. I'm always got like dictionary.com.
You're the best.
Yeah.
I'm reading people's comments. I'm it's all good.
Yeah. I want to get into some of the comments.
Let's finish up. I think the main, we're going to get that big contrast between dominant and inferior / maverick function.
The big reveal.
The elephant in the room, finally.
So for an ENTP within the RPG model, well, I guess in the Myers-Briggs, introverted sensing is your inferior or aspirational function. And within the RPG model, it is the stabilizing guardian. Stabilizing definitely competes in many ways with innovating, right? Innovating and stabilizing are just, they're polar opposites. And I want to know, like, what is your experience in a day-to-day with introverted sensing? But before that, just kind of your way of defining introverted sensing.
So introverted sensing, the way I've always understood it, and it's the bottom of my stack. So by all means, nor am I an expert on it, right? You might want to talk to an ISFJ or ISTJ in order to get a more thorough kind of explanation of it. But for me, that's in a spatial sense. So if NE is all about the outside world, then SI is all about who I am, this meat puppet right here, right? This meat suit. And how, like, where am I in space and time, right? Like, like it's my conduit to the physical world, to the here and now. And that is to say, what's happening internally, imagination-wise, logic, data, numbers, all that other good stuff, right? The brain stuff, right? Is kind of on the one side of things. And that's kind of self-contained. But then there's the real world, right? Where these ideas may or may not actually come into being. And the way of getting the stuff that's in here, in my mind, in your mind, and getting it out there, that's always going to be the trouble. And so what I see happening is that you and I share a lot of the same struggles, right? Because of where SI and SE happen to be relative to each other in our respective stacks, right? So for me, memory is going to be a big thing. So earlier I was talking about, even having a hard time recollecting what I was talking about specifically. The scene where, I don't know if the chat can even help me out here. I was giving a movie reference earlier in the conversation. But here's what happens, right? Like, there's these like little lulls in information processing, even though I literally just said it like less than 40 minutes ago. If you were to ask me the question that prompted that example that I use as an analogy to kind of explain my thoughts, I would basically repeat more or less the same thing I said and remember the thing that I'm currently forgetting. But therein lies the problem, right? So the way I've always explained my memory to people, okay, so I'm just gonna explain SI and the relationship as I've always come to understand it. So the way I remember information if you go on your desktop computer and you go to like a little zip folder, right? Whether that's your family photos or if it's one of the email exchanges you and I had, you have this little zip folder, right? It's full of compressed data, right? It's been compressed so it doesn't take as much space up on your hard drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all in the name of saving space. That's how my SI works, right? Perfect recollection. Problem is getting to that information. The way you get into that information is that little compressed folder, you unzip it. Only problem is that folder has now been unzipped into a bunch of other folders of information, right? And then you open up another folder, and then a bunch more, folders open up. And you keep doing that, and you follow the rabbit hole down till you finally hit that, whatever the thing it is that you're trying to remember. And that process is initiated by some sort of lighting up of the external world, whether that's you asking me a question or you saying something, and then my brain starts unzipping folders, and you get this like little cascade effect. The analogy that I use to teach this concept to guests on our Discord channel is I show people a video of a lightning bolt. Okay. And the concept behind a lightning bolt is it's electron particles building up a charge in the clouds. Okay. And these little molecules are exchanging electrons between one another. And that builds up static. Okay. And a bolt is the discharging of that static hitting the ground, which is grounding it. And it's following the individual air molecules between the cloud and the ground. Okay. But before that bolt strikes, there's that initial kind of cascade of individual like little lightning bolts veining out, right, branching out like a tree. And that first process is it's that little spark, for lack of a better word, right? That catalyzing concept.
Sure.
So as soon as that happens, then the bolt finally strikes. And when it connects to the ground, there's the memory. There's the thing I was trying to remember. There's the end goal. That's the SI. The SI is the earth. Right, acting as that grounding element. And it'll hit me. It'll like literally this call will end. I'll probably type, hit you up in like 20 minutes, be like, I remember what I was going to say. Because it just took that long.
Sure. Well, yeah, I imagine. And also within introverted thinking, like there's a lot of like following the branch down and then backtracking and going another, following a different branch from my understanding. And so, yeah, if you have that lightning going all over, sometimes you might go down one way and nope, that wasn't the right path. But by that point, NE is so energized and you're like, oh, these other different options and possibilities and things, and might not actually get to that point, right? First, I want to thank Kevin and Sad Clouds. Thanks for the donation, guys. You guys are awesome.
You guys are awesome. Thank you. It means a lot to both of us.
And everybody else, thank you for supporting. It's great to see. I'm glad I did this, and this is something that I want to do more often. So
we've got way more of this. I mean, hey, I'm happy to be the kind of catalyst to get the ball rolling here. But we got plenty of other people. We're going to try to hit up like all the types here, right? Get one of these at least every week. Who knows, right? So you all in the chat, you all who follow us on YouTube, thank you for your support thus far. It really means a lot to me. It really means a lot to Matt. It means a lot to the both of us, and it means a lot to our whole community that we've kind of gathered here. We appreciate your support going forward, and I'd just like to say, stick around with us. We got a lot more in store for you.
Yeah, we do. We're making some big moves coming up. Finally got off of my introverted thinking saboteur kind of aspect where like I kept refining, trying to nail down on these specific language and words and definitions and things like that, and I got it to the point that I feel introverted, feeling comfortable with where it's at, and am more comfortable with bringing that out and expressing that. So very cool. I actually have a question. I know with ENFPs, I've, the several that I've interviewed and good friends and things like that, when they get stressed out, one, it feels like they're just kind of getting closed in on, like a cave is kind of closing in on, but also they get a lot of like stomach problems and physical issues of like, I can't eat anymore. I just don't want to do anything. It's an introverted sensing, kind of internal, just collapsing. But I thought maybe that was partially because of introverted feeling, right? But also, introverted sensing is there too. So I was wondering, like, what's your experience with that, or what happens when we hit a metaphorical wall or something?
That has definitely been the case with me. Again, you all are just gonna have to wait for the post-success memoir. I'll write that book, a few years down the line. Pick it up in bookstores. Everyone who's here, if you guys follow me on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, stay tuned for that, I suppose, at some point. But yeah, I've been in the ringer, to say, to put it lightly, a few times. And that has definitely come up. That I've had, similar gastrointestinal issues. I've had, the shakes, a little pit of anxiety building up on the inside, and having that manifest physically. That is something that definitely has happened in the past.
Yeah.
The likelihood of that ever happening again, I kind of know where it's coming from now, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess with age comes wisdom. So as far as what my response would be in those circumstances, like being stressed out or being under pressure, that's the point of having this information available to you, right? Is that you can come up with a plan, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's like hell or high water, whatever winds they may be, we can find a way to weather the storm. Mm-hmm. And that's really what the benefit of this sort of introspective learning has been, is to say, okay, well, who am I at my lowest? Who am I at my best? How can I make sure that those two, stay somewhat constant and consistent, and I can figure out a way to kind of raise the bar, so I'm not hitting this lowest low point anymore.
Mm-hmm. And within personality type and everything like that, and within the RPG model, like this maverick, your inferior function, introverted sensing for you, extroverted thinking, the strategizing commander for me, it's a maverick. It rebels, it goes in another direction a lot of times, it causes issues, but it's also like, if I could just get this dude or dudette on the team, like going in the right direction and being part of the crew, then things would work out so much better. So just as an example, for me, I need to bring in extroverted thinking aspects to my life. I need to have some sort of like really small checklist, or just kind of organize things, clean things up a little bit. Do something kind of productive in the morning to satiate that commander aspect of myself. Because if you don't do that, then that's when it explodes, and it's like, no, I'm going to take the whole party in this direction. So how do you kind of honor introverted sensing, this guardian aspect of yourself? How do you do that?
I'm a bit of a foodie. I love to cook. I originally wanted to be a chef and get into culinary arts, specifically like this really nerdy version of it called molecular gastronomy. Those who are out there know what I'm talking about. Some cool shit.
Sounds like a TI thing too.
Yeah, it is. Most assuredly. But I just try to, listen to what I'm craving, right? That's not to say that you always want to kind of fuel what an addiction might turn into, right? Like, I'm not, abusing that sensation, but at the same time, like, I'm not ignoring it either, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if I feel sleepy, I will take a cat nap, right? I will try to regiment myself so that I am, at least available if something comes up, right? But I will take naps throughout a day. I will, eat what, my comfort foods are. Sometimes that's like waffles or, buffalo wings. Every so often, right? Treat yourself. Yeah, love me some good buffalo wings. So I will, do little self-care things like that, just to, space out whatever tension might be building up. I obviously, some people are talking about their dietary innovations and regimens in the chat over there. So I've done keto. I'd like to get back into that. I got off of that for a little while just because it didn't quite line up with my lifestyle at the time. And so now that things have kind of returned to normal as far as the world is concerned, a little bit closer there, We're getting there. Hang in there, everyone. 2021.
Yeah.
Turn it around.
Yeah.
We're getting there. Anyway, so the point is, things of that nature are things that, again, through age, wisdom, whatever have you, I've become a lot more aware of. And so I'll take the necessary steps to make sure that, that aspect of myself is not being completely ignored. That is not to say, like, I've had people tell me it's like, oh, in the gym locker room, or, my friends, if we're going to the pool or whatnot right here, because we have a private pool area. Point is, like, be like, when'd you get that scar? Be like, what scar? And then I'd like look at myself in the mirror and be like, gosh, when did that get there? Right? That still happens every now and again.
Sure. Yeah, I bump into things all the time.
Exactly.
Like, what is this? What? Yeah, I definitely don't pay attention to my physical body in terms of even just hunger and pain. Like, I could go all day without realizing that I didn't eat. I tore my meniscus a couple of years ago because I was putting, like, I would stand up. This is my leg. Okay. I would push down on my leg as I stood up, and it would kind of bend my knee. And it would pop every time. And I was like, oh, it popped again. Oh, it popped again. Huh. But I didn't really like process why that's happening. And then I did it one last time, and yeah. So that's kind of my relationship with my physical body. A lot of times it's kind of like that. Cool. Thanks for sharing about that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Go ahead. No.
I was going to ask if you copied any of those questions, because I see that there's a lot of comments, and it stopped me from scrolling up too high.
There was like a few absolute like questions with a question mark at the end. I have those kind of set aside.
Well,
but
and
if you guys wanna,
yeah.
No, I was going to address the audience and say, hey, if you guys want to hit us with some questions, by all means, we'll start taking those now. I'm gonna point out, I think, what's his name? Cedric. Yeah, Cedric. Cedric was asking about my IQ.
Oh, yeah. I can't scroll up that high. So I can't highlight it.
I have not gotten Mensa tested. I forget, honest to God, which IQ test I did take in college. It was mandatory that we take it for a lot of the business development courses that we were taking at the time. Last I checked, it was like 130, 135, somewhere around there.
I have no way. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I get what that means. Like, so for all of those who are about to start typing in the chat, one way or another, like I get the implications of that. I've never been that kind of person to use that as a litmus test of other people. I'm far more interested in like the tangible aspects of someone's personality, right? As far as, who they are as people, what their interests are, how they contribute, like what they do for a living, their artistic nature, qualities. So I'm a lot more, as you said, right-leaning, I believe was the term that you used, rather than left-leaning on a logical basis. No, me. So I'm addressing what they were talking about in the chat. So I'm a lot more on the artistic side of things than I am on the logical side of things. So I'm a huge science nerd. I did robotics for many years. I have coding experience. I have like all the, stereotypical desires and experience within that respect. But I'm also a lot more interested in like filmmaking, in graphics artistry, in writing, in rapport building, stuff that you more associate with the right side of the brain versus the left side of the brain.
Yeah, you say that, but definitely extremely intellectual.
My favorite.
I mean,
the phrase I always use to explain that to people is like, listen, there is an art to science, and there is a science to every art.
I'm working on the science. Trying to figure that out. Okay. Do you remember patterns easily? I'll highlight this one. Wow. There we go. You see that up there?
I mean, so remember to me is all about recollection. So that information is stored, absolutely. Whether or not I can access it at a moment's notice is entirely dependent on what sort of stimulus I'm working off of, right? So, us having a casual conversation, right? Like talking about the cognitive functions, I will bring up, relevant movie, film, TV, game, famous quotes by philosophers or scientists, whatever is relevant to the conversation. That stuff comes up almost immediately as soon as that, stimulus is there and catalyzes that recall process. And then if you ask me to do the same thing again 10 minutes later, unless that exact same trigger comes up, right, the recollection process is going to take however long it takes to remember exactly what it is that I was trying to remember in the first place.
Mm-hmm. What's your how good are you with the kinship details, like birthdays and kind of those kind of the information?
So my absolute closest friends, I have all their birthdays memorized, and I have your birthday memorized, obviously at this point. July 31st.
That's right.
Yeah. See. Yeah. So yeah, that's not an issue. It's really just a matter of.
Happy birthday to you, by the way. I should cut you off and say that.
Don't worry about it. That was a few days ago for the people in the chat.
Yeah, everybody, happy birthday to Rahul.
So yeah, kinship stuff. It's how close am I to the person? How often am I going to see them? How relevant is that information? It's a bit dry as far as how that's decided, I guess. But that's not to say that I don't have the capacity to. Absolutely.
Sure.
If I care about you, I'm there with you. If that's not to say that if I don't just care about some random stranger, but that's like a different level of care, I should say.
Sure. That's an important point. If it's how much energy and time and devotion you put into a specific cognitive function and character, right? Like introverted sensors, like ISJs, like they love that stuff. So they put their time and attention into those areas, and that's where your focus goes. Energy flows, right? So I can see that. Okay. Everybody's saying happy birthday.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Do you remember names easily? That was another question.
If they're unique, absolutely. If they're kind of like a bit generic, like Michael, Steve, Jason, that sort of thing, well, it's like, what else do you have going on for you that I can kind of attribute that name to? So I do employ mnemonic devices to remember things quite often, but that's something that is more of like a learned skill than an innate skill, right? So that's like a technique that I picked up over time, just as a courtesy, right? To go to like business meetings and you meet people that you might not necessarily see the same day, but you might see them later on during a conference or at a bar somewhere, right? Be like, okay, I'm going to make a quick word association with you. So that way it's like kind of parked. And so those who watch like Sherlock or something, right? Like a memory palace, if you will, as a memory technique.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I see, hold on a second. I think this might be quite a big one for us to handle within this conversation here.
Absolutely. No. By all means. What were you going to say?
I mean, well, first of all, like there's tons of information out there about all the different cognitive functions and your type and ways of reducing stress and following your strengths and all these other things. I think the biggest things, don't just set like the 16 personalities, MBTI, Myers-Briggs, type code. Go into the cognitive functions. That's where all the power is, all the real benefit is understanding those 8 different, underlying processes and how those work within you. And you can read some fantastic sources on it. You can watch some videos, other channels too. Just find what way of approaching it works well for you. And, some people want to go deep into that information. You don't always have to, right? Sometimes just finding like the Pareto principle, the most leverageable 20% is going to just completely change your life. And you might not even need to go any further than that because you have what you needed to improve your life in whatever way. I don't know if that answers that question or not, but dig into the cognitive functions, find somebody that how they explain it resonates with you or makes sense to you, whatever your personality type is. And yeah, go as far as you feel that you're still benefiting from it.
I agree with what Matt said completely. Really, that was the first leg of my introspective journey, was coming to grips with, okay, well, what does this weird arbitrary four letter description of ENTP actually mean, as far as who I am as an individual? How am I experiencing my own cognitive functions? How can I begin to leverage my skill set as far as like how I process information, etc. I mean, that's obviously an analytical way of looking at it, but that's a good start. Is just to say, okay, well, familiarize yourself, as in just absorb the information. Don't try to categorize it or whatnot right off the bat, but just get comfortable in your own skin once again, now that you have this information about you.
Yeah, and start with just the dichotomies, like what is an extrovert, what is an introvert. You can go from there. Just having the knowledge of like, I'm an intuitive, you're a sensor. Oh, that's why. Oh, that makes sense, right? I'm a perceiver, you're a judge. Oh, okay. I can see why we're kind of clashing in some areas of life. And then from there, go down through the process. I also, I do life coaching, right? And I do use hypnosis for it as well, and understanding your different characters and your parts of yourself, and leveraging those for growth and finding ways of, following your style, your purpose, and things like that. So that's, of course, an option. But there's also the longer self-study process too. And
exactly,
if that's the way you want to go, that's the way you want to go, and that's cool. I kind of see
a few more questions.
Yeah. What's your impression of INFPs?
I love them, and that's not just because you're here.
That's kind of what this is saying right here.
Why do the other signs think that INFPs aren't evil? Take a rabbit, for example. You say it's cute, but you never know what occurs in its rabbit hellhole. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, Juan O'Brien, you've seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? That's the rabbit you're thinking of, possibly. It's just a wee rabbit, and then it's like, ha. I mean, hey, if INFPs are rabbits and they're really just, Bunnicula, if anybody remembers that series, then so be it. I'd rather be bitten to death by a rabbit than something else, because at least I'll be like, aw, as my life is being sucked out of my neck.
You're so cute when you gnaw my arm off.
Exactly. No, I really think they're marshmallows personified. I think they, all the INFPs I've met over my lifetime, not just Matt, but all the other people that we interact with on the daily, just I know all the INFPs are like,
no,
just like they want to prove that they're not just fluffy marshmallow
crispy
humans. Yeah,
toasted.
exactly.
Actually, Maro is my nickname from my wife, and that comes from marshmallow, because I'm kind of pasty and look like a marshmallow, but also personality type wise too, I suppose.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Who doesn't like marshmallows?
That's true.
So I say this about, like, I think this is more true of sensor feelers, so SFs, right? So you got the ESFPs and the ISFPs. I think for them, when they use their FI, like, it's a little bit more kind of on the nose when they're using that as the basis of their decision making, and sometimes that lands them into hot water, right? So it's in that scenario that I'd like to kind of maybe tap them on the shoulder and be like, are you sure about that? Are you sure that that's what you, I mean, yeah, you're sure that that's what you want to do, but is that really what you should be doing, right? And then that kind of, and then when they don't listen to me, it's like, yeah. It's when they don't listen to me and bad shit happens, and then I kind of have that little I told you so moment with them. Not that I lord it over them for too long, but it's more like, maybe listen to me next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah. For something that you mentioned before that I did want to bring up again, you were talking about, you can explain how you got to a certain thought process or decision or whatever it is, conversation. And for me, introverted feeling, I don't know where you went, but I'm just going to keep talking. Introverted feeling, it's at this place where there is like no language for what's going on. It's a largely kinesthetic thing, right? I just feel this way about it, right? My whole body is saying to do this thing or to not do this thing. And to define that with words is extremely difficult, right? Which is why a lot of times it comes out through art and metaphors and, those kind of things. But yeah, I just find that interesting. I don't remember exactly where I was going with that. I think when you were saying, like, are you sure you should do this, right? A lot of times we don't know. And we're not taught to, check in with that physical sensation and define it, name it, locate it within your body, give it a description, like what color is it, what texture is it, and to remember that and use that as a ballast for making decisions for, future decisions. Because we don't go in through the TI logical route of it.
There are some more questions, but I was about to ask, when do you want to
kind of wrap it up a little bit, just in a little bit. I do want to
maybe 2 or 3 more, or is there something you want to kind of close in on? Your choice.
How do you? That's going to be an interesting one to answer here. How do you notice in ENTPs like Rick that their FI is a polar function? Does your FI feel heard? It feels like it's attempting to be heard. It feels like there's good intention with all the interactions, but a lot of times I do realize that maybe I'm not explaining things in a way that's going to be communicated in the appropriate language. Rick definitely does his best to say, okay, well, this isn't really how it works for me, but I know that that's how it works for you. And so if that's what you want to do, if that's what you got to do, then do that. And I'll support you with that to the best of my ability. Right. He definitely honors that, the individual aspects and kind of my skills, my superpowers in my own way, which is what I try to do with him as well. And with other ENTPs, like it doesn't really come up. I don't think that I necessarily go down into this kind of depth of conversation. A lot of times it's like, well, why would you do it that way? What? That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, I don't know. It just kind of felt like the right thing. And well, if I can't explain it properly, if I can't communicate in the language that's going to get through to the other person, then I'm not doing my job properly. That's how I see it. I take it into myself. Like if I want to communicate it, I need to learn how to communicate it better.
And Matt's also really good with this sort of thing. I've never really had any such issue, or we've never even had that kind of conversation, at least not that I can remember. Yeah. So the only time I've had those kind of conversations, like I said, I have, some really close SFP friends, right? Both extroverted and introverted. And I'm their kind of like mom friend, if you will, right? Like when they go out, they have me tag along, just so I can kind of keep them from doing really stupid things, right? And I offer that service. So it's always kind of amusing, when shit is just shy of hitting the fan, but we can kind of pull back.
It's wafting.
Yeah. But as far as, the individual, I always find NFPs intriguing because FI is so, for lack of a better word, spooky, right? Or unclear, right? Yeah. It just, it does not compute. And I know that sounds so, cliche, but that's why I find it interesting. It's maybe, just maybe one of these days he'll do something because it makes sense.
It does in some way, but not.
It does. Of course. I know that now, but I mean, I guess, if we turn back the time dial, right, to a younger version of me, maybe that's how I would have interacted with my INFP friends.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right, we got like time for two more, I think.
Yeah, I see a lot of conversation, not too many
questions.
actual
Come on,
questions, so.
you guys have me in the palm of your hand. Surely you can ask me something, right? I'm on.
Melting.
Yeah. Hit me. If you can.
Just so it doesn't go to lag.
Yeah.
What kind of characters do you usually play? Either classes or characters within RPGs and things.
Okay, I'm gonna try not to talk your ear off with this one. Make it a little brief. You see this? See this little sign thing? See where it says rogue?
Mm-hmm. I have a guess.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think? Bards,
robots,
clerics, paladins. No, maybe. Typically, you know, I'll point it to you this way. Instead of naming a specific class, like I like to play characters that are. So I'm also a DM. So if I'm playing in someone else's game and I'm not trying to do something new or clever, right? Or if I'm going to just kind of play something basic, if you will, right? Like run of the mill, then I'll kind of build a personalize a character, right? Like kind of thrust myself into the story. At which point I usually kind of default to a very versatile character, right?
Yeah.
Character with a lot of skills that they have, you know, cards up their sleeve. Magician archetypes, rogue archetypes, assassin archetypes, something that is likely to, you know, adapt to the situation at hand very easily, right? They may not be the most powerful character or the most like, you know, martially, you know, expressive or whatnot, right? But they're gonna get through the scenario, right? And it's going to be fun. It's going to be, they'll find a way. Exactly. To quote Dr. Ian Malcolm, right? Life finds a way. That's
exactly. Yep.
Who we are.
Yep. Okay. So I got two questions that I think are really good and they're connected. So I'll show both. First one, maybe if my fingers can click on, there you go. When does an ENTP feel uncomfortable? And possibly connected, what does a loop feel like for you?
Okay. All right.
Possibly connected. I'm not going to, you know, fully seed that, but
so this goes back to, I'm going to even connect it to the FI polar conversation, right?
Yep.
There's aspects of myself that I don't like where I can't come up with a good reason as to why I like or dislike or will not do something. And that's like the little FI bubble that's at the core of this otherwise robotic entity, right? That's that little spark inside that I don't have any logical explanation for, right? And if somebody starts pointing that out and really questioning it, like deeply, be like, why are you like that, right? Or you know, maybe twisting the knife a little bit there, that's when I'll start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Or from like an FE standpoint, if there's like too much awkwardness in the room, right? Whether that's by my own virtue or the virtue of those around me, right? That can start to put me in a bit of an uncomfortable spot, right? If things are a little too dreary or a little too depressive in the air, right? And people are maybe feeling the sad feels a little too much, right? That's something that I've gotten a lot better at you know, resisting the urge to like crack a joke or you know, try to add levity to the situation that might be seen as a bit you know, irrespective, right, of
socially
other people's
inappropriate.
Socially inappropriate, exactly. So that's something that I used to do, I guess, when I was younger that I don't do anymore. I can handle being uncomfortable a lot easier now. Very few things genuinely make me uncomfortable. If they do, I will try to address them in a mature manner that either alleviates the situation or gets us past it in a way that works for people. And then what does it feel like to be in a loop? You kind of have this itch that you just need to scratch, and it becomes like a hyper fixation, right? You like, for me, the loops that I get caught in the most often, and you're privy to this knowledge, is when there's a solution, but it just doesn't quite fit. And this is me now as an individual versus, you know, other ENTPs that I've been in close contact with, right? This is kind of the aspect of who I am as an individual that separates us, where I'm a huge perfectionist. Like I will look and spend countless hours and waste a lot of time to get it just right. And that's kind of like, whether that's problem solving or trying to come up with a solution or trying to come up with some sort of like creative, object or service or whatever have you, idea, notion, right? To go down the list of things. If I don't feel comfortable with it, I'll chase it until it gets to a point where I either say like, okay, I think we're going to definitely back away from this and like move on to something else, and we're just going to drop it. Or I'm going to keep chasing it until we finally get there. And I think Da Vinci had like the best quote to describe this process. He says, good art is seldom finished. It is simply given up on, or something to that extent. Paraphrasing.
How does that relate to people? How does the perfectionism kind of like...
I feel like we need to have a separate video to get into our relationships.
Sure.
We can schedule that next year around Valentine's Day. I think that's a good segment to incorporate into the channel.
Yeah.
I don't levy that with my friends. Like I do have like a certain standard that I like to like hold up for the individuals around me, right? Like I have like rings of friends, right? Based on like who they are, what they contribute to. And, like my inner circle is my inner circle, but I don't really like ask them for anything. It's mostly just pure companionship. And then I have like kind of like a more advanced version of that is more related to like my professional life, right? So that's, again, I forgot what the question was. We're talking about FI here, right?
I was talking about the loop of, the
loop.
NFE,
Okay, yeah. NEFE loop. Exactly.
Wherever
Okay.
you go.
So no, that's fine. So NEFE loop, right? So extroverted feeling. I want to make sure that people are kind of okay, right? Like that's like a big concern of mine. It's like, are you gonna like, is there something going on with you that's gonna like really catastrophically impact everything around you, right? And like that's always a concern of mine, right? But if it's self-contained, right? Like if my friend wants to binge drink over the weekend and he's safe and kind of cozy in his apartment and he passes out or whatever, right? Like unless that's got like a strong chance of him having that come up as like a medical complication, I don't really, like I mind my business in that respect, right? Like I think adults are adults and a certain amount of responsibility should be afforded every single person. Like they are somewhat responsible for themselves. Like there's only so much that even giving myself an overabundant sense of responsibility for other people, like I think there should be a cutoff or a limit at a certain point, because otherwise you're not growing, right? If you aren't allowed to fall, if you aren't allowed to experience certain negative experiences in life, you're never going to grow. So I'm not always going to come to your rescue if I deem it to be a worthy growing experience for you.
Yeah, that's very important. Letting people learn to fail.
Exactly,
and
make
then
their
go
own
from
mistakes.
There. Yeah, definitely. It comes up a lot with coaching and with my daughter as well, which is also coaching in a way. The desire for me to just protect her from everything, but then also knowing that there are lessons to learn from every trip and fumble and failure along the way. I do got to wrap this up very soon, but I saw 2 more questions. So are you okay on time?
Yeah, I'm okay. I think we should just go into the hour. You're fine.
I got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah, that's fine. Let's wrap it up. Yeah.
So I see, I thought this, if you have any thoughts on this, INFP and ENTP have a supervisor-supervisee relationship in socionics. Do you feel supervised? By Matt. What do you consider like one supervision? What is that for you, right?
Yeah.
and kind of our relationship.
This is kind of weird because you literally are my supervisor. So like taking it as an abstraction is kind of like weird, because I'm like, well, technically he is my supervisor, so he would be supervising me.
Suppose I
Yeah,
would be, but I don't necessarily.
Yeah, that's not our relationship, but you are by definition my supervisor in a manner of speaking. So you do supervise me, but I'm also, a very individualistic worker, as in I tend to be a self-starter, so I don't necessarily need supervision in that respect.
Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily like to supervise.
Exactly. I think we just get along.
Yeah.
I do. There are situations where I think morality is what kind of ends up being like the question of the hour, right, between the two of us, especially in our D&D games together, right? I'm a lot more open to doing kind of amoral decisions than you are, right? Mm. And you always take not necessarily offense or anything to that nature, but you always are just a little bit, shaken up, I guess, for lack of a better word, by those kinds of actions being taken. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess, and if you were to call me out on that, that would be your supervision that you'd be providing me. Be like, hey, don't do that, right? It's a bit much, right?
I know from my perspective, as I said, one, I don't like supervising people. I had a long conversation with my ENTJ friend about this, and kind of our different approaches to supervising people and rules and structure and things like that. And for me, I have this idea. I know it's idealistic. It's not how it actually works. And this has come up within the Discord server, both the Geek Psychology one and the INFP one a little bit. I tend to say, okay, everybody that's here is going to be a good person, and they're just going to do the good thing, and things are going to work out as they are. And I don't really need to control anything. I don't need to create rules. I don't need to have a structure, because we're just all kind of doing the right thing. And within like the two chat servers, there have been kind of issues where, because there was no rule structure, things happen, right? Toes get stepped on, people get offended and things like that. Or just somebody who does something that they thought was okay, was not okay, right? And for me, I know that also comes down to, well, one, not wanting to put my personal values and ideals and everything on another person and say, this is what you should do. But also just making decisions in general, like from a TE standpoint, like to say, okay, this is what I want you to do. This is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to approach this. I know that that's something that's lacking within our relationship, I think. Like if I were to say, okay, this is where we're going. This is the exact thing. This is how it's all going to work out. Let's go in this direction, and maybe create some deadlines and things like that. I think you would completely be like, okay, let's do it. And I'll pull in all these resources and people and ideas and TI stuff and all the stuff. And here we go. We're doing it. But exactly. For me, it's a lot of like, yeah, but do I really want that? I don't. I still feel through it, and it's a very slow process. So that's where I'm lacking, I suppose, on a supervisor tip. So that's the technical term, supervisor tip.
From my limited understanding, right? Because this has never been like an aspect of typology as far as relationships between types that I've actually explored fully. I have explored it with my ISTP friends, which I believe in that scenario, I'm the supervisor to them, right? And I have explored that one. But this one that we're being, asked about, INFP versus the ENTP, and how that relationship plays out. The way I kind of would, hypothesize what that would actually look like is what I was alluding to earlier, which is like kind of like moral, amorality versus a more definite moral structure, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of saying, hey, listen, we gotta watch ourselves, or when we, do shit, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
For lack of a better word, maybe watch that could be something that we can explore. Yeah, watch yourself when you do shit. Exactly. Just be mindful of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that comes from lack of definition of the rules, the boundaries, the container that we're all interacting in. Cool. Do you want to plug. I tried to point to your sign above my head. Point to Rogue Robot Studios and kind of plug your stuff, and then we will.
Yeah, we'll kick it off. So thank you again to everyone in the chat. Thank you for your questions. It's something that I'm trying to like get back into, right? I think 2021 is the year of new beginnings. So between myself and the Geek Psychology channel, we're gonna have a lot of content coming out. So if you guys want to follow us, since I'm going to be working exclusively with you for an undisclosed amount of time, I'd actually just say follow us at Geek Psychology, right? If you want to follow me specifically, I do a lot of posting on Instagram more than anything else about like what I'm reading, and then that kind of bleeds into my Twitter. So it's mostly like books. It's a book club, right? Showcase type deal. So that's going to be at Platinum Spartan 077 on Instagram, and then at Platinum Spartan on Twitter. And I'll have, maybe we can add those to the doobly-doo below.
Yep. We'll put them in the comments. I'll pin it or something like that in the description.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thanks for supporting. Thanks for the donations. Thanks for just being here. Thanks for working on yourself and kind of bringing out more of who you are into the world, because the world needs you to play your best, to level up, and to keep going. So thank you very much. Make sure you join the Discord channels as well. We'll put those in the description. And not exactly sure when the next one will be, but it's coming. Dun, dun, dun. All right.
We'll let you guys know for sure.
Yeah. Hopefully within more than 1 hour notice. So, all right. That's my TE. That was NE just going like, okay, let's do this. Yeah, this is here we go. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all for that. Yeah. Just a nice, good time with the folks. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace. Peace. Peace. There we go. Peace.
Oh God, peace. I don't know how to hang up.
Usually press the little button that says hang up. Yeah.
I think I found